Dou aberta com a primeira sessão plenária, que é subordinada ao termo Turismo e Inovação. E conta com a participação, por favor, de Loic Van Cutsem, diretor-geral da Oxygen Lab Bélgica. Muito obrigado pela sua presença. Bem-vindo. Javier Fonte, diretor Respondeco, Escola de Eventos, Turismo e Hotelaria da Universidade Leeds Beckett. Este painel será moderado por Luc Gobin, diretor da OITS Europa, que também chama ao palco para conduzir os trabalhos a partir deste momento. Bem-vindo. Merci.
Okay. So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our first plenary session here in Albufeira. And it's on innovation, but let me begin with a little topic I experienced yesterday here at the marvelous Albufeira Inatel Beach Hotel. So one of the participants was positively surprised when I said that she was in a holiday center on social tourism. She thought her perception of a social tourism center was a little bit dated. So perhaps this little anecdote explains why ISTO and Initel choose for a congress on tourism for all and to work on innovation. Indeed, our sector has a need to present them more innovative, and we need also to use the new communication tools that are developed on the market. Therefore, the first day is about implementation of new ideas, social values in the organization, and the second day is more about communication. If you think about innovation, you need also to know what we are talking about. That's why we invited some specialists on the field to share our experiences in the different fields. So the members of ISTO can be inspired with their presentations. So my first panel speakers here are Loic Van Cutsem and Javier Fonte. And my first speaker will be Loic Van Cutsem. He launched several social enterprises in Belgium and manages Oxygen Lab since 4 years, I think. So he says that, and I said it, that oxygen is part of a larger ecosystem. So we have here a real expert on social innovation, but let him explain what social innovation is all about. So Loic, you have the floor.
Thank you, Luc. Good morning, everyone. I'm very pleased to be in such a beautiful location. It's also the first time for me discovering this region, and although I might not yet be considering where I could retire, but it's certainly a very interesting option to remember as well. So indeed, we are an ecosystem to stimulate social innovation, social entrepreneurship. We do research, we advise social enterprises, but also public institutions and corporate companies on how to develop entrepreneurial, sustainable models for social impact. And I will guide you through a definition, a bit of context setting on how we understand social innovation, the process, and some initial examples. Now, we cannot talk about social innovation without talking first about the societal trends or challenges that we are facing in Europe, all over the world, but certainly in Europe. And we've mentioned them already earlier this morning. We're talking about aging, we're talking about poverty, higher unemployment. We're certainly in more than anytime today talking about immigration, migrants, different environmental challenges, of course, climate change. So we're facing some very significant social challenges on one hand. On the other hand, our public service systems are facing also budgetary constraints, or at least the existing budgets are probably not enough to solve all the societal challenges by themselves. Therefore, we really much believe there's an opportunity, a need, but also an opportunity to develop new, innovative models, approaches to solve these social challenges. And as a matter of fact, I think it's particularly interesting to be able to share thoughts and exchange with you today, because I think it's a very relevant sector. As a matter of fact, you are already in this field, in the social tourism field. You are already, to some extent, all social innovators. But I think now with the new evolutions of the society, the new challenges, the question is, how can we maybe go a step beyond? How can we further strengthen this social impact? How can we develop new, more innovative, sustainable models for the sector? Just a definition on social innovation. It's really about the development and implementation, and I emphasize the implementation of new ideas, services, or models to better address social needs or social issues. And it very much involves also, and I'll come back to that later, new forms of collaboration between different types of stakeholders, public, private, civil society, etc. The visual here simply illustrates the fact that it's also about identifying cracks in our systems. So social innovation, I see it more as a complementary movement to all the existing civil society, public, and corporate or private initiatives. But nevertheless, there are still cracks, inefficiencies in our current systems, and that's where social innovation taps in. Typically, what are the typical characteristics of social innovation approaches? It's very much demand-led, and I mean by that we start from the social need, the social issue, the social challenge, and try to involve as much as possible the end users. It very often takes the form of hybrid new forms of collaboration with different types of actors, different types of disciplines, academic, private, public, civil society, again, citizens. It's indeed participative and empowering of the end users, of the citizens, so it's typically not top-down approaches, but more bringing people together and letting them generate ideas and let the best ideas emerge and transform into social innovations. It's very often quite tailored to the specific situation of a region, of a locality. It's very difficult to produce mass global solutions for the societal challenges we face today, which are sometimes quite specific. And generally saying, these social innovations or the social innovators behind them tend to be rather open-minded, open in terms of sharing the knowledge and disseminating these best practices and these innovations in order for others to take them up and scale them and replicate them in other regions. Now, social innovation can take various forms. Public sector is certainly one actor, and there's a lot of social innovation. There has been since long, and there still is a lot of social innovation in the public sector, so initiated by the public sector. I had here one example, maybe more with an example in Belgium, but I guess similar systems exist in other countries. It's called Titreservice or Dienstecheck in Dutch, and it's a system whereby citizens can benefit from these checks to pay people to do household services, cleaning, gardening, etc., and get a fiscal advantage for that. In return, the workers get a legal official contract with all the benefits related to this. So it's an interesting initiative in this case, trying to tackle the informal market and bringing these people back into more formal economy markets. So public sector is certainly one important actor. Next to that, we see a lot, and more probably community-driven or citizen-driven social innovations. They very often do not operate with necessarily a business model. There's no revenue necessarily. There's not necessarily a profit making, but very interesting community-based, citizen-based initiatives. One example, which you might know, is called Serve the City, which is a global movement of volunteers who partner with local social organizations to bring in these community of volunteers and work on social issues. And this movement is now in over 100 cities all over the world. But it's volunteer-based, community-based. Repair cafes are cafes, centers whereby anyone, citizens, can bring damaged objects and have them repaired with people who are in these cafes and offer for free their expertise and their service to help repair products, avoid the waste, but also create social links. As we go further, of course, social organizations, social enterprises are very much involved with social innovation as such, and very often with a business model behind it. And there are different nuances there, but we very much believe that seeing the magnitude of these challenges, there's really room for entrepreneurial models to solve these challenges. And these entrepreneurial models are not, the purpose is a social purpose and not a profit-making purpose, but nevertheless, the mean to get there is to have a business model and a sustainable model behind it. And this can be typically microfinance institutions. Ciel Bleu is a French organization encouraging seniors to move and do sports in order to avoid the indirect costs of obesitas and different types of diseases which could be occurred. And then the fourth actor is more the private actor, SMEs or corporates, and I think this will be touched upon also later on during the day, often called corporate social responsibility. We like to call it more maybe corporate social opportunity or corporate social innovation. It's about compliance on one hand, but also how can these private actors also develop new models, products and services to address social issues. The process is typically, and it's sketched out very easily here, we'll have the opportunity later during the day in our workshop to focus a bit more on this, but it's typically identifying first, of course, these new social needs or existing social needs which are not answered properly yet today, starting from the social needs, developing with partners, with citizens, with public institutions, with private actors, often new solutions and often prototypes, testing these prototypes, experimenting, monitoring, learning, and then once it's proved to be successful, scale them up. I'll go quickly on this. No need to look at all the details of the slides, but there are different levels of innovation possible in an organization, and this slide is more focused on a social business or a business type of organization. It can be at the service or product level, how to design new products or services for different target groups or to enable existing target groups to better access these services. Things that your sector has certainly been doing already since years. The client interface, how do you interact with clients or beneficiaries? And I think it'll be the topic of tomorrow as well, but with the emerging digital technologies, there are new ways and maybe more cost efficient or more innovative ways to interact with clients, online communities, mobile applications, etc. Financial innovation, how to perhaps through microcredits in some industries or through different types of pricing, how can you offer these services in a more affordable or in a different way for people who cannot necessarily pay the full price upfront. Organizational innovation, this taps into different new types of partnerships on one hand, but also internal governance, setting up cooperatives. There are different ways to innovate in terms of organizational approach as well. And finally, the distribution channel. Again, we'll come back to that during the workshop later on. It's been mentioned earlier on, I think partially. Of course, social innovation is a hot topic, and also for the European Commission, which very much sees this as an opportunity to, of course, face Europe's social challenges, but also to stimulate growth and job creation. And as a matter of fact, this whole sector is really evolving and creating, not only in terms of GDP, but also in terms of job creation, is a very important player in Europe. It's been mentioned briefly earlier on, there are a number of support or funding instruments which are being developed at the European Commission level, and among others, indeed, these regional funds, so the European regional development funds, the European Social Fund, the Interreg programs, which are typically programs which, among others, stimulate social innovation among or between regions, so more trans-regional, transnational programs, which could, I think, be very interesting as funding instruments or as opportunities to develop new social innovations within your sector. Now, of course, and you're much more aware of these than I am, and it's probably not an exhaustive list, but there are some threats, new evolutions, new actors, new trends in the sector, privatization or new types of private actors, different forms of competition. Subsidies in all sectors generally are reducing, or at least the envelopes are quite closed, limited. The emergence of different forms of travel, low-cost travel, but also peer-to-peer sharing models. This trend of individualization of travel, but also maybe an evolving expectation on the social impact of social tourism, and how can this perhaps be enriched, strengthened through different ways. I'll skip this slide and show you, and I'll end with this 2-3 examples of possible approaches or new initiatives ongoing in the sector, and we will hear much more examples later on as well. This is based on the Living Lab concept. I don't know if you're familiar with the Living Lab concept. It's basically creating an environment, whether it's an offline or physical environment or an online environment, to co-create new products and services very early in the process with clients or end users. And here in Slovenia, it's still a pilot project, but there's an interesting living lab which has been set up around tourism, in this case more ecotourism, to design with users, with travelers, with citizens, new products and services. So the living lab approach is certainly an interesting one to consider, and there's been quite some significant initiatives taken, for instance, in the health sector with living labs. Well, this is much more familiar to you, and I guess very much embedded already in your way of operating community-based tourism. I just wanted to mention this project in Portugal, in Porto, called Welcome Home Tours. And in this case, they're building the capacity, training homeless people to operate as tourist guides in Porto. I think it's a very interesting way also to see how can we perhaps involve our beneficiaries in our model and build capacities, train them, and help them reintegrate in the communities. Another example of cooperation between actors in the tourism sector, it's an online tourist knowledge management platform, and it very much aims to federate different actors in a region in the tourist sector, so basically all actors of the value chain, into an online platform and bundle the offerings, share best practices, and also engage with end customers using new technologies. And finally, just as an example, in Belgium, a travel agency or tour operator called Joker, and some of you might know them, active since years, probably 20, 25 years, I wouldn't know exactly, but who evolved recently from a travel agency to creating more of an ecosystem to support tourism, of course, but also entrepreneurship, learning, and social inclusion. This is something I was just, probably it already exists partially, but maybe there are ideas here for the sector. How can you evolve and perhaps mutualize the expertise that you have within the network to create learning networks, learning platforms, but also training academies, perhaps, like they do. They have the Via Tourism Academy, which trains, of course, tourist guides, but also provides intercultural training, for example, to employees of corporate companies, etc. And they also have Via cafes. These are cafes in different cities in Europe, and also in Asia, whereby people meet. So create social links on one hand, but on the other hand also open these cafes to creative industries, entrepreneurs, and people who would like to develop new product services and show them in these spaces, next to e-learning platforms and training centers. So voilà, I think this closes my short presentation on social innovation, what it is, what it could be for the sector, and we'd be very happy. We will be organizing a workshop beginning of the afternoon or after lunch, the first workshop after lunch, I guess. It will be an energetic one, whereby we will work with you or with whoever would like to on these social challenges, these social trends, trying to identify the most relevant trends and see them as opportunities for your sector and start generating, brainstorming on new ideas, innovative ideas to further strengthen the social impact of your activities and of your sector. So I hope to see you during this workshop this afternoon. Thank you.